Hey guys, Mike Dimon here, back for week number 3 of the Mixed Bag of Goodies series. This week I had a little job to do, and then I'm going to show some stuff that went along with doing that job. The job is making this here. It's a spider nut for a smithy granite. The person that asked me for this has one that's one size smaller than this. It's the 1324. This one's the 1342, I think. 1340. So he has the shorter version. He asked me to make a spider nut for the rear part of the spindle, and one that he can chuck up in the lathe chuck, so that he can use it somewhat like a 4-job chuck. So we're going to get to that, and we're going to do. I'm going to show you the change gears for the smithy, how to switch over for cutting metric threads, and what to remember when you're cutting metric threads. And then if I have time in this video, I'm going to try to do some sharpening of drill bits. Adam did a really good series on that already, and not to beat a dead horse, but I have a different way of doing it. It is not something that I was taught. I didn't know how to sharpen a drill bit when I first started doing this, and it was the way that I figured out to do it, and it works really well. I use the techniques that my dad has taught me in Adam's freehand techniques, but nothing yet has performed as well for me as the way that I want to show you guys. Not knocking anybody else's style, because Adam sharpens some crazy good drill bits. My dad can sharpen drill bits freehand. I cannot. I really do suck at it. So I use a different method to do it, and it works really well for me. So let's get into it, and I'll show you guys the parts of making this. And part of the reason that I wanted to do this is because I started to do a spider nut series, and then I didn't finish the end of it. I still didn't videotape putting the 4 holes spaced out. That's a pretty simple job when you have an indexing head. You put it in at 0, you drill, tap, crank it to 90 degrees, drill, tap, so on and so forth, you're done. But I did want to show the internal threading and cutting a metric thread, so you guys can see how I do that. Okay, so here's the gearbox on my little smithy here, and I'm going to show you how to switch these gears over to cut a metric thread. So, starters, make sure you have the right tools. It's a 10 millimeter nut or bolt that holds this top little gear in. And I think this is something that I'm probably going to change. I'm going to put a different nut or washer on there, because that one is really flimsy for how much pressure that has on it, especially with this being recessed like that. It doesn't flush up, and it has a tendency to bow out that part there real bad. So once you get it apart there, pop the gear arm down, and the bolt here, that's a 16 millimeter, and then this just has a slot. You can use any small opening wrench or crescent wrench, and this piece threads out, and these 2 gears are locked together on a tiny little spindle here, and there's a split ring that holds them on. So these 2 gears and this gear here are the gears that need to be changed out. So cutting the metric thread that I'm going to be cutting is, this gear will go from being a 30 to a 66, and then these 2 gears will be a 63 and a 64. And I'm going to reposition the camera and move this over to the bench so I can show you how to pull the gears off of this part. Alright, so here's the change gears that I have. Now, this is the gear that replaces the 30 tooth, the A gear. And I don't know how well you're going to be able to see it, but this is the wrong gear. This gear should be the same thickness as this one. And you can see it's quite a bit of difference. The reason that's important is because these two gears are together, and since they're so close to each other, this thing is too far forward and it engages both gears. So Smithy said they were going to send me a new set of change gears with the right A gear replacement, but I never received it. I haven't called them back yet, haven't reshipped it. I just got tired of waiting and chucked it up and bored out this backside so that it fits in and is just perfect for engaging just a single gear in the back. And if I need to, I can always call them and get another change gear, the actual one that I need for this. So moving on, this is the two gears that I pulled off the machine. So I have my little split ring pliers, and these are absolutely awesome. I got these from Kmart of all places. I broke the pair that I had, so I wanted to grab a new set, and there's a little switch here, and it switches how it works. So you don't have to, the other ones I had, you had to pull a pin out and flip the things around, and it took a lot longer than just going, and you're done. So, get these off of here. If I could get it in the hole there. The spindle pops off. There's a little key in there to keep it on in place. Alright, so the E gear is a 64 and the C is the 63. So you just line up the key in the back, and it goes right in when you get it lined up. Split ring back on, and we're ready to reinstall the metric gears onto the Smithy. Alright, so to switch these out, pop this gear off, and there's a little key and it normally sticks inside that gear. Pop that gear on. This is the 66. We've got the other spindle that threads in. It's got a little slide here that it fits into. It's almost like a a T-nut. Which I just spun out of the groove here. There we go. So once you get it on, you line it up with the D gear, which is here, and then this pivots back up and lines up, and now we've got set up for metric threading. Now on this machine, there's a quick change metric box back here. There's this little lever, which I don't know how well you guys are going to be able to see because it's all black and it's a little black lever. It's very important to remember to throw that lever, because if you don't, you're going to be very close to being a metric thread, but not really. It's something that I've done almost every time I've used it. You pull it forward and it engages, and it changes it over for cutting metric threads. And then when you switch back, you have to remember to re-engage it for inch threads, because likewise, if you have the lever out into the metric setting, you're going to be cutting some funky threads that are not going to work. So that is how you change the threading gears on a smithy. Alright guys, so I'm making another spider nut for somebody, so I'm catching up on the parts of the video that I didn't do last time. So I've got the center board out to the size, which is, this is a metric 34 by 1.5 thread. So I've got my tool set and my compound turned the other direction for internal threads. So we're going to make a scratch pass here and make sure that we're cutting the right thread. And I'm only going to be threading, the spindle has just over a half an inch, or just under a half an inch of threads on the back of it, so I'm going to thread just to that, just past a half inch. I'm going to go a little bit further, and then the other side I'm going to bore it out back towards the threads a little bit so that it's nice and clean inside. Alright, so I'm getting ready to do the scratch pass right now. I've got my thread gauge out and ready. I've made sure my tool post is lined up. I've got the compound rest turned at 29.5 degrees offset, so I'm coming in this way instead of threading in this way. And my camera died, so this is my phone. It actually looks like it's a little bit better quality than my camera, so we'll see how it goes. It's zip tied to my tripod. Now, doing metric threads, you can't disengage the half nut, or you can, you just have to make sure you put it back in the same spot every time, which can be a little tricky. So I'm not going to disengage. I'm going to run the machine very, very slow and go just real light until I get to where I need to be. So this is just going to be the scratch pass right here. And you can see I don't have any oil, I'm just doing a scratch pass, so I want to be able to see it. And it didn't look like it barely even touched it, so. Let's see. Nope, that didn't even touch it, so we'll go a little bit more. Now I can actually see it to see if I've got the right thread or not. And it's good. I'm sorry for the glare with these lights. The inside has got a little more glare than I would like, but gotta work with what you got. Alright, I'm getting ready to do another cut here. I had to look up the depth of cut on this because I didn't remember what it was from the last time I did this. I'm going to do a spring cut here, and just take a couple thousandths and then check it, because I'm pretty sure we're getting close here. This is the thread that I made to check. I cut this thread and then checked the spindle lock nut that was on the smithy to make sure it threaded on, and it's just barely starting, and that's it. So we got a little ways to go still. Alright, so I'm going to show you guys how I grind drill bits. Now, most people, I've seen people do it on a spinning disc, the belt, and a regular grinder. And the way most people do it is they come in, they get their angle, and they grind, and then they roll out of it. And that gets you that nice little curl there. I can never seem to do that right, and I'm horrible at it. So what I do, I take my table and I angle it down a little bit. I get my little guide set up to match the angle I need, and I come in like this. I get the cutting edge lined up, squared off, and I use my thumb to push it forward and engage it, slide it back and forth, and then pull it out, flip it over, and then I've got my drill gauge right here that I can check it real quick and get it trued up. So I'll fire it up real quick and show you guys. I always keep a mason jar of water because, oops, it gets hotter than snot out here, and this way it doesn't all evaporate off and disappear. So I'll fire this up and make some noise, and I'll show you guys how I do this. Check and see what I'm doing here. Alright, and I'll reposition the camera here so that I can get a better close-up and show you what the grind actually looks like when I do it this way. Alright, so stop kicking my camera. This is what the grind ends up looking like. You can see there's a little tiny chip in this one still that I need to go a little bit further, but you can see doing it that way it gets a pretty nice looking edge on. And what I'll do is if I'm good, all my bits are fairly sharp, I put a different disc on, a finer grit, and grind it with that, and that gets a lot smoother finish. But you can see that's a pretty darn good finish for an amateur, I think. And then just a little bit of honing. I've got a little tiny Arkansas flat that I use, and I just hit it by hand just real lightly, hit the edges and get a nice little hone on it, and I have had absolutely no problem with these since I've been doing it like this. I used to always, I'd spend an hour trying to get the grinds right, and normally what I'll do once I get the grind in, this had a factory grind on it, it just chipped. Once I get this grind on, I'll come back in and hit this back edge and take this back edge out too at a steeper angle. And what gave me the idea was the Irwin drill bits have a grind like that on them. And I was like, I was thinking, how can I get a grind like that? And I figured I could probably do it on my little disc grinder, little sander wheel, and I think it works pretty well. Alright, so I know I said I was going to give a tour last time, and I didn't. I had stuff piled up all over the place. So I'll give you a little walk around to the shop. This is my sandblasting area and my welding and cutting area. I've got my welding bench over here that I made, and my little Everlast TIG stick welder, my little Lincoln MIG welder. My little table, one of these days I'll do a complete review on it, but I made a little clamping system and everything for it, and I'll show you guys how I did that. And then come around, I've got my little cheapo bandsaw, my milling clamp down stuff, and this is my grandfather's old toolbox I did the review on last week's video. The closing milling machine. Then I've got my scrap pile. That little piece of channel right there is eventually going to become a hydraulic press once I get the time and get the shop cleaned up enough where I feel comfortable taking on another bigger project. Then I've got my big rollaway Craftsman, the Smithy, and then the Craftsman is set up right here. And I've got my other workbench, which is kind of still a mess right now, but I've got all my grinding stuff set up here, which I know I need to move that. I just don't have a place to put it yet, so I know I forgot to move it in the video. Normally there's a cover on there, and I took it off because I was going to do this, and then I did the grinding first. And then underneath this, a surfacing plate, and this is actually where I do all my reloading at, is what I originally built this bench for. And now it's kind of being taken over because of the machining stuff, which I enjoy doing also. But my little Okie Rig shop, hope you guys don't mind the mess too much. Alright guys, I have a couple little things here I want to talk about real quick before I call it quits for the video. I got to run to Harbor Freight today. It's about an hour away, so I don't get over there too often. I also don't buy much from there because I don't really care for cheap stuff all that much, but easy things that I know I'm going to destroy anyways, like a little dead blow hammer, just a little oil bottle. I figured I can't really go wrong picking them up from Harbor Freight. I've heard, I'm gonna try it, that Harbor Freight's drill bits are actually not too shabby, so I might be picking up a little set of those and give them a run for the money, see if they're worth anything. One of the questions somebody had was my little oil can, or my little oiler. It's a little needle oiler that I use when I'm doing all the machining. I really like it because it's got the very fine point, and I can put just a little tiny dab right where I need it, or I can give it a good squeeze and it shoots out a decent amount. But I switched to this from using bottles like this because the bottles that I had were 40 years old and they leaked like crazy and it was just making a mess. And this is all I had. I really do like this, but sometimes I need a little bit more, and I like having a couple extras sitting around. I mix my cutting fluid. I use a pipe threading fluid mixed with the Molly D tapping fluid. And that's what I came up with. I kind of just stumbled on it because I had a little bit of the Molly D left, and I had some pipe threading fluid, and I had enough to fill up one bottle with both of them, and I did, and I loved it. So that's kind of what I've been sticking with ever since. It's about a 60-40 mix, or 70-30. Heavy on the pipe threading, and then just a little bit of that Molly D in there to thicken it up a little bit. Over the next few months here, I'm going to be rearranging the shop and getting a few more tools, hopefully. So things are going to be changing a little bit. Hopefully I won't have to do too much more rearranging, but I'm limited on space, so every once in a while I run into a problem and I have to rearrange something in the garage. So we'll see how it goes. If you guys like the weekly video, let me know. If you like what you see, hit that like button for me. I'd really appreciate it, and subscribe if you want to keep up and see some more. There was something else that I wanted to talk about. No, I can't remember, so we'll leave it there. And if I remember, I'll write it down. I'll put it in the next week's video. Have a nice day, everybody.